Why would anyone voluntarily live in an HOA neighborhood? Unfortunately, we had no choice. When we were house hunting in Santa Fe, the only neighborhoods without HOAs were either too far from where we wanted to be or not where we wanted to live. Ours is mostly okay. We got a letter about our trash cans being in our side yard. They've backtracked on that rule, and one about our admittedly weedy yard. It was in the summer, high 90s, I'd rather pay a small fine than get heat stroke, but that's it. My dad's HOA is a nightmare. They sent him a letter saying a potted plant on his porch clashed with his white front door. Nothing clashes with white. The amount of HOAs really depends on where you live. I grew up near Princeton, New Jersey, and while there were some neighborhoods that had HOAs, the townhouse complexes, the mansions that had a neighborhood golf course, the vast majority of neighborhoods weren't HOA. I think that's because the price of the houses turned away many unsavory people, which is sad but true. I live near Philly now and it's the same deal. There are many non-HOA neighborhoods, but being a little bit more of a mixed demographic, there's more unsavory neighbors. That being said, I would not be opposed to a HOA. I specifically looked for an HOA when I bought my home. I don't like or have time for lawn care. I don't want to worry about having to pay thousands of dollars at once for a new roof or resealing a driveway. I have a giant gorgeous pool steps from my house that I can relax in all summer without having to lift a finger to clean or maintain it. I never have to worry about snow removal. I never have to worry about the condition of the neighborhood when it comes to resale value. It's the closest I could come to still having a maintenance department without renting an apartment. I read the same horror stories, but I think the reality is that, like any ruling body, sometimes you just get a group of people who are drunk on authority. Others times they are just upholding their duty. And of course, the dudes who complain about their neighbors reporting them for having two halfway disabled cars strewn across their driveways. I'm a huge car guy, okay, but I wouldn't move into an HOA neighborhood and then whine when my neighbors don't want to see an outdoor mechanic shop every time they look out the window, because it takes care of a lot of the things I don't want to deal with. Landscaping, snow removal, trash services, etc. Could I deal with all that if I had to? Yep. Would I rather just pay someone else a monthly fee to do it for me and not do it myself? Most definitely. Especially the snow removal and icing of the sidewalks. There are some truly terrible HOAs out there with some wild and really restrictive rules, but mine is fairly benign. I've butted heads with mine only twice, and both times it turned out fine for me. Depends on what you get out of the HOA. My parents' complex has a marina, tennis courts, basketball courts, walking paths, a large man-made lake, a community rec center, and all landscaping and exterior work is done and paid for through the HOA. That's worth it, Timo. Aside from that, it's kind of insurance to make sure your property value isn't wrecked because your neighbor didn't want to do any maintenance on his home property. When you have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in something that should matters. Let me give you an example. No HOA for me, but my parents have one. They live on a canal that also has a park at the end. If there was no HOA, they wouldn't be able to have a park, and the canal could potentially be unusable due to becoming too shallow and no one to cover the cost. HOA also stops people from putting up things that would obstruct their neighbor's water view. Basically ensures community things are paid for and one neighbor doesn't fuck over other neighbors. My mom works for an HOA and lives in a separate one. Most HOAs don't have that strict of requirements, and most people who complain about their neighbors didn't actually read their HOA and have no idea that whatever they're complaining about has nothing to do with it. The ones with super strict restrictions and rules are dumb as hell though. My apartment complex recently sent a mass email about string lights on patio fences and how we can have furniture on the patios. I know the Reddit circle jerk acts like HOAs are the source of all evil, but in reality it's rarely like that. Most HOAs have shared amenities and keep neighborhoods looking good. The last thing I want is some idiot neighbor that doesn't take care of his house and has 3 rusted cars in his yard. Issue is you only hear about HOAs when they're terrible. I've lived in HOA neighborhoods for the past 13 years and never had an issue. But then again, I'm a reasonable person. We had a neighbor that was 20 and won the lottery. He'd have parties 6 nights a week until 5 a.m. We foreclosed on the house, solving the problem. Hoarders is another reason. Not wanting to live in the worst squalor my neighbors choose is the honest answer. We like to walk in the area, which is nice. As soon as you get outside of the HOA areas, you know it. It's not like it's even difficult. We happily pay $33 a month to not have the dregs of society living next door. Like many things online, you only hear the horror stories because the people that are content have no reason to be constantly talking about it. There's a lot of HOAs that don't really have any power to be all up in your business, they just collect a small annual fee that goes towards maintaining a community area like a small park or other similar services. Also, if you've ever lived next to nightmare neighbors, you might see value in living in a strict HOA area. Having lived in both HOA and non-HOA neighborhoods, I can say that the HOA ones are better overall. Yeah, they tell you what type of roof shingles and paint can be used, but you also don't get people building shacks and parking cars in their front yard. Not as ugly, but man do I hate widespread street parking. You have to slalom through the streets around people who have 2,000 square feet homes and 7 cars. The whole hoods I've lived in ban this. I live in an HOA. They are all not created equally. My HOA has no power to fine anyone, and the most you are going to get is a shitty letter in the mail. The HOA fees are so low because it only covers lawn care for common areas. The HOA rules and powers are given to home buyers to review before they buy the house, so everything is known up front. I specifically picked this house because the HOA was mild and useful, not powerful and newsworthy. If a neighbor has a party and plays loud music at 2 a.m. the police won't come. If a neighbor lets their front landscaping die and has a dirt front yard, there's nothing I can do. If a neighbor paints their house pink and purple, there's nothing I can do. If a neighbor tears their house down and builds an ugly box or some gaudy horrible house, there's nothing I can do. Within HOA I make a call and the problem is solved. All fun and games until you got a neighbor who decides they don't want to pay to park their camper somewhere for the summer when they use it all the time. So it takes up half the street for months on end. That or the retirement community decides to converge and make your property value plummet because they decide to put little knickknacks in their landscaping and planting a forest worth of shrubs in a 0.10 acre lot. I refuse to live in an area with a HOA. I've heard way too many negative stories about them to ever be willing to do that. I would give up the opportunity to buy the perfect house if it came with a HOA. I'm not paying someone to tell me that I can paint my house blue, put my garbage cans out a day early, or park 3 vehicles on my property, or whatever other nonsense they come up with. I have an HOA and it's $100 worth it. It's like $40 a month to handle all the maintenance and stormwater expenses for the neighborhood, and significantly helps the property values by making sure no one is putting up ugly fences or ridiculously trashy stuff in their yard. Some of the conversations and debates that the HOA handles can be ridiculous, but overall it's definitely a net positive. In theory, an HOA sounds good. It is supposed to be an association of fellow homeowners agreeing to abide by specific rules to protect home values. It keeps bad neighbors from bringing down the property values of others. However, in practice they fail because they become too authoritarian, telling people how often grass must be cut, where empty garbage containers must be stored, etc. Sometimes it's the only affordable option if you want to buy a home. When I was looking for a house, pretty much everything in our budget was part of a HOA. I got extremely lucky to find one without one. But that was over 5 years ago. I don't know if those same options exist today. In my area, all new homes are part of HOAs unless you build your own home on your own personal land. The HOA for my condo is super light touch and it handles all utilities, building maintenance, on-site building management if anything comes up with my apartment, some other things. If you own, you're automatically on the HOA board. Like, it would suck if you absolutely had to blast Shakira at midnight with your windows open. But otherwise it's a nice thing to have. I had no choice. I needed a house in my kids' school district, so I got what I could get. I don't have any nightmare HOA stories, just mundane goings on. I suspect 99 of HOAs are like mine, and we only ever hear about the rare, absurd situations. Nobody wants to read a post about whether HOA thinks my new paint job should be more apple or honeydew green. Once you've ever lived in a non-regulated, non-HOA neighborhood with 2 a.m. fireworks, all-night parties next door, pit bulls barking all day tied up in the yard, roach infestation next door that is spilling over into your place, street races down the street, the neighbors doing drug deals, you'll understand why some people like HOAs. Had HOA the condo I lived in. It paid for a mailroom and door person to sign for packages, swimming pool, gym, building maintenance, rooftop with a video and nice chairs. Side yard with grills and well taken care of flowers and other plants around. It also included water, heat, internet, garbage disposal, valet parking and much more. Worth it! My home maintains 2 pools, has landscapers come out weekly for people's lawns and cuts their grass, get rid of leaves and branches, and pays for trash service. All for $85 a month. Sign me up! It costs me that much anyways just for trash service, let alone I save money not even have to buy lawn tools to take care of it. The pools are just a bonus. I would rather live in my car than ever live in an HOA house again. When you have normal human beings on the board, life is fine. But as soon as you get some power, hungry tripping chatter carrying on there, it becomes a nightmare, real quick. The only way I'd consider it is if the house was given to me for free, and then I'd sell it ASAP. A lot of people have no idea what they're signing up for when they buy a house. They do like living in an orderly neighborhood and they convince themselves that people are just orderly without any kind of incentive. After a few years they realize that the HOA is the reason the neighborhood looks good and they start to get behind it. For $750 a year I don't have to deal with dumpy rundown houses around me or junky cars parked out front or trash in the streets. Most people who buy in an HOA are of similar mindset. They also prevent short-term rentals. I don't have to deal with a bunch of idiots making tons of noise who don't even live in the house. I used to think I'd never. But I miss walking my dog without being rushed by a bunch of unleashed or roaming dogs. My city has a bylaw but they don't enforce it. If the HOA made sure dogs were leashed, which seems like something they would enforce, I'd join just so I could safely walk my dog around my neighborhood. My sister does. She has the most difficult time trying to find a house. Even at one point, putting in offers without going to see the house. She ended up getting one in an HOA with a shared driveway. It's new construction, but she was dealing with an infestation of clover mites and springtails. I can never.